Is this thing working? Are we live? It looks like we're live. What's happening, everybody? I hope everybody's having a fantastic whatever day you are watching this. If you're new to the show, welcome. This is my usually twice a week show. It's a live show. It offers me an opportunity to interact directly with you guys. I go over topics, different motorcycles that I've ridden, and talk about the different, things that I really couldn't get to, things that I forgot about getting to. I'll make corrections to some of the ride reviews that I've put together. So it's a cool opportunity, again, for me to just interact directly with you guys. It also affords me the opportunity to work through topics that maybe wouldn't quite make for a very good single video. It would end up taking too long. So I can kind of muddle my way through that. And so that's pretty much it. That's the live show in a nutshell. And so in this case, I'm going to be talking primarily about bikes that I have recently ridden and reviewed, and wanted to talk to y'all a little bit more about just some of the different newer experiences that I've been able to have, some upcoming bikes. And so that pretty much wraps that up. Speaking of interacting, Marco is in. What is going on, my man? Got the flex. I like it. So what you might see me do is you might see me wander off. The screen might go black every once in a while. Usually that just means that I am digging through here, pulling something up. I'm going to share, do a screen share or something like that. But with all that being said, recent bikes that I've been able to ride that have been really impressive and that have lasted long after turning the keys back in, I got to tell you, I'm just going to dive right into it because I'm a little bit limited on time tonight. One of the first bikes I wanted to talk about was the Aprilia Tuono that I rode. And the interesting thing about that bike is that me riding that bike comes on the heels of a very recent GSX S 1000 ride and review. That bike was right off the heels of me riding the new Hornet 1000. And keeping in mind, this is the North American market bikes. That's how those bikes, that's the state of tune that they're in. Well, let me just say this. The Tuono, I was both really impressed with it and I don't want to say disappointed. Let me just walk through it, okay? Let me start with the weird part first because I don't want to call it disappointed. I didn't know how to set that bike up. Guys, the big part about the Aprilia is how much technology is behind all the different riding modes. Thing is, you can dive into that thing and put in all kinds of different riding modes, wheelie control. The list goes on and on. It's everything that you could adjust, it can adjust. Thing is, though, is when I set that bike up, I just went, boop, that was it. Put it in sport mode. Let's take this thing for a ride. Because trying to get into that thing, it is not very intuitive. Unless you own that motorcycle and have had the opportunity to fiddle with it for a while. I mean, trying to reduce wheelie control and all of that, guys, I tried. And it just would give me a sub menu and I'm going, this isn't affecting what I'm trying to do. I was probably one wrong click away. It's got a 5-axis joystick basically that you have access to, that once you get into the mode that you want, you can dial out, dial in, or whatever the different ride qualities when it comes to the nannies. Either way, standard sport mode was really good in terms of just riding the bike. Throttle response was immediate, and that's putting it mildly, although a little bit of a lag on initial throttle turn. And what I mean by that is if you can imagine your fist being straight away, right? So your fist is straight away, you turn the throttle, it's a little bit soft, but then the real range of the throttle kicks in. Anyway, that's something that you get over very quickly. Every motorcycle has its own weird quirk when it comes to throttle actuation, perform. Anyway, I always set everything up on the cable bikes before I ride them. I'll get the clutch where I want it because of these hands, and I'll get the throttle. I'll get the tension on the throttle right. A lot of times they're extremely loose. So I get everything set up, except you can't set it up because it's a ride by wire for the throttle. So the first thing that I noticed with the Aprilia was just how aggressive that bike was going to try to feed in power right past that initial throttle tip in. And in that video, you'll hear me talking a lot about that bike's just absolute monster torque delivery in that initial throttle hit. And again, in that video, I even said it feels like you've got two parallel twins. I actually misspoke. What I should have said is that it feels like you've got a parallel twin underneath you that's about 1800 cc's. If you could imagine that being that initial torque delivery, that's what it felt like. I mean, it was just like the Street Glide that I rode in how that thing was going to react upon throttle entry. Now, that being said, because of the modes and how the bike was all set up, once power hit, it flattened out. And that's where it felt like the GSX S1000 had that Aprilia wrapped up. If I would have loved to have that buddy of mine that I ride with, Orange Crush, we were talking about this. I was like, dude, we need to go to the dealership, grab the keys to both bikes, flip a coin to whichever one of us rides whatever bike, because we're the same height and the same weight. Get these things out and run them. Because I'm telling you, the Aprilia would jump out on that S1000. And then as you're going through the gears, it felt like that S1000 would march down the Aprilia, which is kind of like what happened with the GSXR and the RSV, right? So this is another area where nothing about, and I mean nothing about the spec sheet has anything to do with how a motorcycle is going to get down the road. So what I wanted to share with you guys was this right here, the Aprilia Tuono. And the reason why I wanted to share this with you is this. I rode what is in essence this bike. Now the newer bike has got, it's 1199 instead of 1177 cc's. The new Tuono makes 180 horsepower. And by all rights is the better of all of the Sport Naked bikes, primarily because of that fairing up front. Not that the GSX-S had any issues there. But I liked the Tuono so much that I started looking into what would it take for me to get one of these bikes. And the more I looked at it, the more I started to think, you know, the GSX-S is a true street fighter. And if I were to get something else, it would probably be the GSX-S. For another reason, and that is, I'm going to go ahead and bring that one up too while I'm thinking about it. One of the things about the GSX-S 1000, and I've got to tell you, this is something that was kind of on the forefront of my mind when I was thinking about these bikes and when I was riding the Tuono. It was weird. How do I explain this? It was weird how much better the quick shifter was on the Suzuki than it was on the Aprilia. I don't know that might be subjective, okay? Because there's some gadgets and doodads that once you start getting into these bikes, a lot of this becomes very subjective. And so anyway, it really did. I got to thinking after riding the Tuono, how do I get one of these things in my shop? How do I get one of these bikes in the garage, so to speak? Because it really was that different of a riding experience. It was so torquey. I'll even take it a step further. It hit even harder than the Street Glide did on initial torque hit, which again, it was so frustrating because that bike with no nannies would probably be the most crazy fun bike you could ever ride. At least for an advanced rider where all you want to do is hooligan-esque type stuff, that would be the bike to do it on because it was so torquey and because it would just rev, but it was very kind of flat the way that it revved up top. But anyway, that windscreen on the Aprilia really is that good. But I gotta say, guys, when it comes to just outright value for dollar, man, let me just go ahead and pull this bike up for you real quick. This is the 2025 GSX S1000. And the thing is, with the S1000, and by the way, they don't have the red colorway for 25, which is a real bummer. But the S1000, and I know this is, it almost feels like I'm pandering towards Suzuki when I say this, but it's a true street fighter. There is no upper fairing. There is no windscreen, just like you wouldn't have found any of that stuff back in the day. It is a GSXR 1000 engine, frame, and swing arm. It just doesn't have fairings. What else would a street fighter be, guys? You know, back in the day, we would take the wadded up bikes, strip them down to whatever we had to, whatever bars we could put on the thing, we would put on it and run the thing around. It wouldn't, a lot of times wouldn't even have a front light. So I'm just saying, you know, to build a hot rod, that is the hot rod. And the problem with the Tuono versus the GSXS, another big issue for me with the Tuono, because I'm not kidding, guys, I really was trying to figure out a way to get a Tuono in the shop after riding that thing. But I kind of went back to my experience with the red. Let me do this. I'm going to pull up the 24s instead. I prefer the 24 colorways. So I'm going to go ahead and bring up the 24 colorway for you guys. The red one is the one that I rode and probably the one that I would buy. So anyway, and I was giving Hunter a hard time at the shop because this thing was sitting underneath the awning. And I was like, man, you can't have that bike in front of me. Dude, it's driving me nuts. And he goes, we might just have to throw it on a truck and drop it off at your house. I was like, might have to, because for me, guys, that's the better bike for any amount of money that you're going to spend. And look, the 24 doesn't have the new LCD screen. I would prefer the colorways of the 24. I like the red. I also like with the with this bike with the blue. Let me bust out the blue real quick. For the 24, the reason why I like the blue a little bit better is because it has the blue tank. The newer bike, the 25, has the silver tank with the blue side fairings. I guess really it's 6 to 1, half a dozen to another. But for me, it's going to have to be Suzuki. And again, I know what you're going to say. Yeah, you're just a homer for Suzuki. Well, shit, man, they keep making badass bikes. And I don't know. The other thing about the Suzuki was this. I know that I could re-gear the Suzuki, right? So I could take it. I think it's got a 45 tooth rear sprocket. I could go 46 rear tooth. Leave it in A1 and just have a bike that's a little bit more feisty in general, and would be plenty, just all kinds of fun playing around on back roads. Anyway, the only reason why I'm bringing all of this up is because of the fact that these bikes are so inexpensive now. By comparison, the amount of performance that you get out of a GSX S1000, say you put a tune and exhaust on the thing and let her rip, this is going to be the best bang for buck that you're going to find pretty much anywhere. So that's just kind of how I am with these bikes right now. But getting back to the Aprilia, let me drag that thing back up. Where'd it go? Where'd it go? Let me get it. Let me get it back. Hold, please. So, oh, and then you have the RSV. Okay, this is what I wanted to talk about. Here's the thing with the RSV. This is the funny thing. The 425, the new Aprilia RSV4, is the highest horsepower offered by a major manufacturer for a motorcycle that is legal to ride on the street. This new Aprilia is rated at 220 horsepower. And for if you're not in the know, that is a shitload of horsepower. here's the thing. So I talked about the Tuono, and y'all know how much I like the Tuono, but I almost felt like I didn't give it the right chance that it deserved because I didn't have it set up because I'm not an Aprilia engineer, which is what it takes to set the thing up, it seems like. But I'm not really a Sport Naked guy. I do love the Sport Nakeds, but if I were to get a Sport Naked, I think I would go GSXS. But this bike is calling my name right now. The reason why is I've got a buddy of mine that has this bike. And although it's amazing, I've never ridden it, but it hits super hard. You roll into this thing and it absolutely launches. About the only bike that can hang with an RSV4 down low is the GSXR 1000. But I've got a GSXR 1000. I know how it's going to run against the Aprilia. It's not going to be that far off, if any at all, because I know what it's rated at, but Suzuki's do what Suzuki's do best, which is not really adhere to the norms of what a dyno sheet would have you believe. Because it's not like the outgoing bike was underpowered by any stretch of the imagination. It was rated at 217. And I know just because of back-to-back contests of speed, not between myself, but of course between others, that it's not uncommon for the Suzuki to be able to hold its own with the Aprilia. But, and it's a big but, motorcycling isn't about outright performance. It can't be, because if that were the case, only one motorcycle would ever sell. But what I like about the RSV4 over the GSXR 1000 and the GSXR 750 is that, look at it for one. Two, it's got the noise that comes with a V4. And I got to tell you guys, just after riding the Tuono, if I can get that noise all the time and it's a sport bike, which is what I'm more comfortable with, we might be onto something here. So anyway, the gears are turning. I love me some Suzuki, but don't be surprised if one of these things doesn't end up in the shop. We might have to pair the flock a little bit to get there. But if you've never ridden something with a V4 and then you ride something with a V4 that runs like that, you almost don't have an option to go any other direction but the Aprilia. The only thing that would keep me from going completely like cannonball style into an Aprilia would be the dealer network being so difficult to, like, it's just hard to get a hold of, one of these bikes. And I love this, the Stingray Blue, but Poison Yellow looks pretty freaking sick too. So I don't know. Anyway, the gears are turning right now, guys. And I got to tell you, I think I could be forgiven if I stepped away, but I'd be having to step away from my beloved GSXR 1000 to do it. And I would also have to let go of the 750 to do it. And I don't know that I would be ready enough to do that just yet. But I mean, damn, that is a sick looking machine. Anyway, let me check in with you guys. Oh, Sharp's asking, what up, B? Looks like Suzuki is unveiling a new bike, 731, maybe a redesigned GSXR. Well, I don't know yet. Okay, so there's a few things that are coming up right now with Suzuki that we do know. Obviously, the GSX 8T and GSX 8TT have already been released. And unfortunately, I think that those bikes are going to land a little bit soft. Not to say there's anything wrong with the 776 power plant, but it's going to have to be significantly more potent if it's going to realistically keep up with the Joneses, so to speak, in that realm. What I mean by the Joneses, I mean the 750 Hornet. They've got to do something for outright horsepower, even though the 776, I do feel, is a better street engine the Hornets got it beat in pretty much every measurable metric when it comes to horsepower and power to weight. So there's that. But Sharp, check this out. There's been rumors now for not 2026, but 2027 that there is going to be a new Euro 5 compliant family of GSXR, 600, 750, and 1000. Now, I don't know exactly what that looks like just yet, but there has been that that one announcement saying, look, wait till EICMA. That's when you're really going to find out. So I'm not sure really what we're going to get for July 31st. I would be lying if I'd even tried to speculate. I'd just be speculating, I guess, not lying. Yeah. Anyway, I think that we've got some really cool bikes that are going to be coming up, but I don't know what the future exactly looks like for the GSXR platform once you start getting into that Euro 5 compliance. I will say this, sport bike popularity has gone straight through the roof. Sport nakeds have taken a bit of a hit, as a matter of fact. They were basically the motorcycle du jour, if you will, for a long time. And because of that, we got shackled. I know a lot of people don't see it this way, but you've got bikes like from Triumph, the Street Triples, which is a freaking Daytona 675 with a 765 engine in it with no fairing. But we got stuck with bikes like that more than we got new revised versions of actual true faired sport bikes. And I understand why on that too. They're less expensive to make. They're less to insure. All of that is reason enough to, make them popular. But sport bikes have made a major comeback. Does that mean that we're going to start seeing more and more of some of the revised and revamped bikes? We can only hope so. And the reason why I say it that way is I feel like they're just better all the way around. At least for guys like me that are much more comfortable on the actual sport bike itself, a bit more chest forward. You can modify a Street Fighter though, and make it more comfortable in that respect. So, but we'll see, fingers crossed. Ryan is in. What's up, man? Sam's in. Say, I know politics is frowned upon. Can we talk about HR 4117? I don't even know what that is. So I definitely wouldn't be able to give any thoughts on it. I don't even know what that means. Sam saying 220 is almost too much for a normal rider. It is way too much. It's not almost too much. It's way too much. So here's where the downside of all this power starts to hit. And this is a universal thing, guys. Once you get past 200 horsepower, it's the tires that start to really be your limiting factor. At one point, I used to say, man, why are you even talking about, all these nannies and rider aids and all this other whatever? The reason why you have to have them nowadays versus why bikes back in the day, it's not so much of an issue, is because these bikes have enough power at mid throttle to break the tires loose. And depending on the chassis geometry, it can do so rather violently. I will tell you from my own personal experience that the GSXR 1000 is, I am known when I'm powering out of some corners. We even went back, we're on a ride recently, and all three of us were leaving patches on corner exits, basically meaning we were leaving black marks as we were exiting these corners. And that's what these bikes, just as we're dragging them up onto the basically making them more upright, dragging them up off of the side of the tire, you're still pouring the power on as you're dragging that thing up. I can tell you this, at much more power than what we're making, you've got to have some kind of intervention for, I would say, 90% of the riders that are out there. So, does that mean that, better tires, all better tires do is they don't allow the nanny to kick in, except for some of the newer bikes, they have predictive nannies now. So they're not reactive, they're proactive. And that's the reason why you've got to take all of that intervention out, because if you don't, it's not it's not reactive, it's proactive, which means if it knows the angle and what's going on with the bike, it just simply won't let you do anything, as opposed to giving you power and then reacting if something goes wrong. Oh, Sam's talking about, 40, basically it's the emissions rollback. Okay, so look, here's the thing. It needs to stay there. Whatever the older emissions rules are, it needs to stay there. Okay, so why is that? Isn't making it cleaner a better place? No, it's not. Let me tell you why the old emission standards are bullshit and why the people that put these things together are fucking morons. Okay, so when we start talking about emissions testing, you have an engine, and let's say that engine is 3 liters in displacement, and that engine runs on gasoline. Okay, we now know a few things. We know how much air it's going to have to ingest. We know if it's a 6-cylinder, we know roughly the oxides of nitrogen. That can be calculated just by measuring the bore diameter. And then multiplying bore diameter times pi, and then multiplying that by number of cylinders. You can get your NOx calculation with that. What they're trying to get around with all of this is you have, how do I put this? You have people that have no understanding of the work that an engine does. And so when you talk about a 3-liter naturally aspirated engine versus a 2-liter turbocharged engine, to power a particular vehicle is going to take the same amount of power. The same amount of gas is going to be needed, if assuming both of them are roughly a 3-liter and a 2-liter, with the only difference being a lower frictional loss for the smaller engine. That's where you get a slight uptick in fuel economy. But there's a catch. The catch is that anytime you need to accelerate, the turbocharged engine is going to consume more fuel per horsepower because it has to run at a richer mixture than the naturally aspirated engine. The trick is to try to get them to run lean. And getting an engine like that to run lean is basically a recipe for disaster, because now you're relying specifically on NOx sensors and oxygen sensors, which you're already doing. These are all wideband anyway. But the idea is that you're still going to be running a more rich mixture with the turbocharged engine. There's no reason that you don't. The old set of rules was perfectly fine. And to go in and try to mandate even more fuel economy and fewer emissions, I think people are forgetting that there is a breakover point where you literally can't get the thing any cleaner. And manufacturers have been putting together their own very unique and creative ways to try to make emissions cleaner. Air pumps to pump air into the exhaust, fluted exhaust pipes to try to draw in outside air. There have been so many goofy, like Wonka ass Rube Goldberg devices put together to try to make this stuff work. It doesn't work like that. And so what ends up happening is manufacturers just game the system in the area that they're going to be reading the like the testing, and that where their criteria is based on RPM and acceleration rate. The manufacturers just lean the thing out, and that's it. And what you're left with is it's bullshit. What the manufacturers are doing are bullshit because the rules are bullshit. They literally can't clean them up any more than they already have. And there is no better fuel to power a vehicle outside of gasoline or diesel. There's nothing that is as energy dense, that is as easy to produce, and that is as clean as these engines are. So to keep trying to, it's this is what happens when you elect idiots and you expect somebody that doesn't have a clue of what you're talking about to even know the right questions to ask somebody that does know what they're talking about. And somebody that does know what they're talking about that's been bought and paid for is going to basically create a game and then make up their own rules as they go along. So rolling this thing back to 4117 or whatever it is, rolling it back to the old emission standards, they're fine. Look, the engines have never been cleaner, and I'm a big fan of everything leading up to this point to get engines to be clean. But you've got to admit that we have hit a saturation point when it comes to the ability for these engines to be clean and deliver the amount of power that it is going to take to move these things around. And when I say these things, these heavy ass cars around, because of all the safety equipment and all the electronics and everything else. Guys, look how heavy cars are now. Look how big cars are now. It blows me away. And look, manufacturers should be free to make vehicles with hybrid technology. If you want to buy any of the, Sam just posted target smog check, diesel emissions. I don't care about that. Ag emissions should never come into play. Anything agricultural should never be. That kind of stuff is stupid with a side of dumbass. But anyway, the long story short is to have any new regulations on internal combustion engines is not going to make the engines better. It's going to make manufacturers just go, okay, how do we make it hybrid? Okay, well, hybrid adds money, adds a ton of cost. Now you're not going to sell them because people can't afford them. So anyway, that's my rant on that kind of stuff. I don't really feel like it doesn't make a whole lot of sense to me to, when we start talking about emissions and as clean as these engines are nowadays. I mean, damn, dude, they're so clean now that it really makes you wonder what the expectation is. Like, how much cleaner do you think you can make this thing? Because, I mean, it ain't going to run on pixie farts. It doesn't work like that. And talking about diesel stuff, all of this diesel particulates and all this other crap that they're going to have put on diesel engines and in diesel truck. That's why I didn't buy diesel. I can't afford the damn thing. So, and I'm not going to buy some old clapped out thing. I'm going to want something new, something nice. I don't know. We'll see. But anyway, getting back to it. White's asking, is GSXR coming out with a new 750 next year? Well, here's the thing, Wyatt. The 750 is kind of up for it's up for a refresh. There is a lot of talk. There was a ton of talk that the GSXR 600, 750, and 1000 were going to receive Euro 5 compliance executive orders. Now, that means that they're probably going to have to move to a ride-by-wire. There's been a few things that that are going to have to be changed up so that bike will make whatever Euro 5 compliant, whatever categories and whatever the shit it is, it's got to do to make that Euro 5 happy. It's got that to do. And it's funny because it's nowhere near it. The funny thing about the GSXR family of bikes is I think they might be Euro 4 compliant. I don't even think they are. So, which is weird because they've got catalytic converters. And as far as I'm concerned, catalytic converters means you're compliant. It's a motorcycle engine, for crying out loud. So anyway, that being said, though, the announcement was, the original announcement was that we should be looking at EICMA in November, but we could be hearing something even sooner than that. So hopefully something happens there. This is the other weird thing, and I don't know why it is, but we can go back. I was talking about the Aprilia earlier. how is it that the Aprilia and all of the European bikes, how are they Euro 5 compliant? You ever wonder that? Like, how is it that those bikes are Euro 5 compliant, but the Japanese bikes are not? It doesn't really make a whole lot of sense. I mean, Triumphs are Euro 5 compliant. They've got all kinds of different displacements and engine configurations, parallel twins, triples, and they are fine. So I really don't know what the issue is there. I think that it may have to do with NOx emissions with the 4 cylinders, and I think it has something to do with NOx versus displacement. And that's where you start getting into the total ring area versus displacement versus RPM. And there's some kind of another thing that's included with that. So that might be the reason why. But I mean, BMWs are 4 cylinders, Ducatis are 4 cylinders, Aprilias are 4 cylinders. So I don't know. I don't really have an answer to that part of it. But we shall see. Sam's talking about some car stuff. The funny thing is the American market, the American bikes are more neutered than the European bikes because of sound issues. Has nothing to do with actual tailpipe emissions, if you can believe that. It's all sound related. I was blown away when I learned that. It's pretty weird. But yeah, of just getting back to what I was talking about earlier, it's funny that, again, I mean, we can talk about the Tuono as like its own entity with as good as that bike is, but I just don't know that I could ever let the GSXR go for one. Mixin saying, Mason, what type of exhaust should I get for my 25 GSXR 1000? Well, I went with the M4, and I went with the M4 because it's a known value, makes a ton of power, and I'm running a little bit longer can. I'm running a 12-inch can on that bike, and that thing is a monster in terms of making torque. I mean, it's, I talked about that Aprilia. It's every bit as stout down low as an Aprilia with that M4 and with the tune. Now, I went with more Mafia for my tune. Two-wheel Dyno Works is also a really good option if you don't have a local tuner to send your ECU off to. But I spent my own money and I got the M4. I would highly recommend that you would go that route. And look, here's the other thing. I mean, M4, they have their own race teams, or they sponsor their own race teams. And that kind of says a lot to me. It's the exact same exhaust that they put on the race bikes as the one that you can buy from them. So, and here's the other thing. For whatever reason, again, I mean, my bike probably wouldn't lay, my stuff never lays down the biggest number on a dyno, but somehow or another, it always ends up first at the end of a track. So I really do like the M4. Oh, Ryan saying the Tuono's got some competition with the Ducati. Well, here's the thing. You're exactly right about that. And I would love to ride one of those bikes. Unfortunately, I just didn't get it. I haven't had a chance to ride one yet. And the last Ducati that I rode, it's been years ago, but I can tell you that Tuono, it's pretty good. And that RSV, man, it's calling my name, guys. I'm telling you, the way that those bikes sound is just, you can't really put it into words. It's something that watching it online, just watching a video doesn't really do it the same justice. So Sam's talking about the Euro 6 compliance on. Oh, yeah, look, dude, listen, I'll just say this. When it comes to the car stuff, I'd say, man, I'm pretty much checked out. I know what's going on with some of it. It's like, oh yeah, that, but I can't look. So if y'all want to talk about car stuff, Tim Kuniskis just basically being put over all of North American marketing and all of that, it does nothing for me. You got guys right now that are selling off their Demon 170s like they're allergic to the cars now. You've got so many people that are moving away from that brand, and all of it, like every ounce of it, is you've got so many people moving away from the brand, and all of it has to do with the fact that Dodge won't make the car that you want. And they're trying to make Dodge an aspirational brand, and they're trying to Europeanize the brand of Dodge through Stellantis. They have gone so far down the wrong path that I can't even talk about them anymore. There's nothing to talk about anymore. Even if Ram comes out with the next truck and it's time for me to get a new truck, will I get a Ram? Maybe, maybe not. It's one of those things where I don't know how else to put it other than I'm so apathetic towards the brand that they could come out with a 1,200 horsepower all-wheel drive version of the new Charger, and I would whatever, because that thing is going to cost an aspirational amount of money. Like, we're talking house note levels of money that I can't afford. I'm not going to get excited about something that I can't even dream of owning or experiencing. And I've built cars that are going to be faster than that thing. So again, why would I even get excited about it? Let's see. Oh, Ryan saying, then Ducati sticks a V4 in a cruiser muscle bike. Yeah, the Diavol. Are you listening, Cowie? Get the Eliminator H2 out. They need to. That would be killer if Cowie did. Oh, Ryan, listen, I don't think there's nothing that Mopar can do to revitalize themselves. Look, I'll tell you that the RHO is an awesome truck. It's actually a pretty decent value, I guess, but I can't get on board with calling something a value proposition at $70,000. All right. That is, even by my standards, that's like just a stupid amount of money. Like, that's an irresponsible way to spend that kind of cash. There's nothing that Dodge is going to bring to the table that I'm even remotely interested in. Again, because of the proposition that you're going to have to spend an inordinate amount of money for a car that nobody has been asking for. These things, I'm telling you right now, the problem with Dodge, anything that they release moving forward is going to be stillborn. Unless they bring out something that is smaller, that utilizes the Hurricane the way that is playing to that engine's strengths, forget it. It's not even worth talking about the brand anymore. It's dead to me, unfortunately. I hate to say it. And until I see something, until I see something from them that even remotely gets me excited, that's why I don't even talk about it anymore. Sam talking about GMC. Yeah, Sam's another cat food commercial. Damn. Yeah, I don't have any control over ads on this thing, man. So I don't even have a cat. Itches in. Good day. So, yeah, like I say, I don't know how the ads work on this one, guys. But guys, seriously, I mean, I know we got off topic a little bit, but when you start getting into the emissions thing, that starts to bleed into the bikes too. And I cannot understand for the life of me what benefit there is on a motorcycle of all things to go through all of the trouble and all of the headache for an emissions play on something that is in essence a recreational vehicle. And this is another thing. You don't see catalytic converters on boats, right? You don't see catalytic converters on airplanes. You don't see catalytic converters on helicopters. You don't see catalytic converters on jet skis, at least not that I'm aware of. I mean, you don't see catalytic converters on all these other things that are conveyances that would fall under the realm of recreational vehicle. And let's be honest, these types of motorcycles and where they're dropping these types of laws on these types of machines, they are recreational vehicles. They, instead of being on the water, they're on the road. And I just cannot see for the life of me any honest to God reason how this furthering of Euro 5 plus, Euro whatever on a motorcycle is going to have any benefit to the environment whatsoever. It does nothing in the grand scheme of things. So, Sam, emissions are a form of road tax. Yeah, I guess you got to pay for it up front, but yeah, it feels like that. And the other thing, it's unnecessary, and it's not necessarily better for the environment, but it's not better for the bike either. You know, these engines are small. They produce a hell of a lot of power for their displacement. Having a small catalytic converter, you're just asking for trouble. You're asking for a failure there. You know, EGTs are going to be through the roof on these things. Anyway, I just, there are some things that just don't make sense. And there are some things that the energy would be much more efficiently spent going after something else, I guess. Is Ryan saying, leave our bikes alone? For sure, leave our bikes alone. I don't see any reason to have that type of technology on a motorcycle. But anyway, the bikes that I've been riding. Okay, so getting back to that, we're going to be shutting this one down in about 5 minutes, so I better get to this. When I rode the Aprilia, I really liked that bike, but it almost made me appreciate the GSX-S more. Now, I haven't done a second thoughts video on the Hornet, and I feel like I really need to do that. And I think that's going to be coming up in an upcoming video. But since I've ridden the Hornet, I've ridden the GSX-S and I've ridden the Tuono, and I'm going to be putting a video. It's going to be Honda CB1000 Hornet second thoughts. And just to kind of give you guys a preview for that, after riding the other bikes, and you ride a motorcycle and you're not riding the other motorcycles at the same time, right? So you don't really have an A-B comparison at the time. And at the time when I rode the Hornet, it just felt very lively. But after riding these other motorcycles, it felt to me like the Hornet maybe wasn't necessarily the value that we all thought that it was going to be. Taken in a bubble, it's an incredible bike at an incredible price. But I think that there have been enough corners cut with suspension geometry and, well, for the North American market at least, the tune on that bike. It's a lot more squirrely than the other bikes are. I think that it's going to take some suspension setup to get that bike right. But of the bikes that I've ridden coming into this, it's the least impressive, and it's the least, how do I put this the right way? It's the least well-developed of the group. It feels more adolescent than it does mature, if you will. Now, that's not necessarily a knock on the bike. It doesn't mean that I'm demeriting the machine. It only means that it's got a knack for a little bit of a head shake. That doesn't bother me because I'm usually getting that when I'm on the side of the tire, pouring on the coal as I'm bringing the bike up. There are some folks, though, that would freak out with that bike doing that kind of stuff. And I get it. And because I'm not as sensitive to that kind of stuff, I typically don't pick up on it. But as I've ridden other bikes, they have really solidified their position, in my mind at least, as far as where they sit in the whole pecking order of these modern sport naked. So be on the lookout for my second thoughts video on that bike coming up at some point. Sam saying modern computer controls can do just as good of a job as a cat. Very close to it. Yeah. Listen, catalytic converters were a great Band-Aid back in the day. But with modern computer controls and as clean as these things are now, I don't really know that catalytic converter is all that necessary. Ryan saying 20660 is another one I've considered. Jonesing for a middleweight naked. That Honda CB750 is one I would try out before I jump on buying another bike. Here it's really good. Well, I mean, check out my review on it, man. I mean, I liked the CB750. The only thing about, okay, so the CB750, if I had any kind of a, like, you know, the cheers and jeers type thing, if I had anything to say negative about the 750, it's just, I don't feel like I can really criticize that bike, because although it does not hit like the GSX-8S, which is arguably a better bike, by the way, depending on what you like. If you prefer initial torque, that's the bike you want. You want the Suzuki. The Honda doesn't have that, but the Honda will just keep revving all the way to the right-hand side of the tachometer. So there's that. And once you uncork them, they make a chunk more horsepower than the Suzuki does. So everything I like about that 776 power plant is everything that the CB750 does not have, and everything that I wished that the 776 had in the GSX-8S and GSX-8R, the Hornet has. So, I mean, if you could just combine those two, you know, if the CB750 was a CB800, that would be that would be all she wrote, really. But you just got to try them on and try them out. Tuono 660 is, by all accounts, a hell of a bike. It's 81 horsepower. And 81 horsepower in that little bike is going to absolutely move. But the GSX-8S is also 81 horsepower, and it's a full 100 cc's or 110 cc's bigger. So just something to consider. So, but in saying that, guys, I got to go ahead and wrap it up. Listen, appreciate each and every one of y'all. Would not do this without you. Be on the lookout. We've got some new bikes that are going to be coming up for ride and review. I'll be letting you guys know which ones are going to make the cut, probably on the Tuesday, Two Wheel Tuesday show. And so be on the lookout for that. Hopefully be bringing you guys some fun ones. Get out there and do something cool for somebody. Chances are they need it way more than you know. And with that, guys, I'm going to wrap it up. You guys have a great one. Take care.